Hello and welcome to episode 166 of The Crate and Crowbar. It's the 15th of November 2016. My name is Chris Thurston and tonight I'm joined by Pip.
Hello.
Just Pip.
Oh.
It's a Pip and Chris cast today because once again we've forgotten where we put all the Toms.
Oh.
We used to have so many.
Yeah.
Toms.
Crawling
Large, Toms small.
out of the walls.
Tom's Junior and Tom's Senior. Tom's Francis and whatever the opposite of French is.
German.
Well, let's not get back on opposites. The ghost of Tom Francis wouldn't like that.
Oh.
Anyway, it's just us two for a relaxed chat.
Fireside chat.
Fireside chat.
Nothing's on fire.
Thank God.
My wine is warm.
about computer games. It might be a little bit of a shorter pod than usual this week, but that's because, well, partly because there aren't very many of us to have hot takes, but also because next week we're probably going to do 2 podcasts.
Way to commit us to a thing.
I hate to podcast voice my own podcast, but we'll probably do a normal episode and a Dishonored 2 spoiler cast.
2 Dishonored, 2 Furious.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Perhaps even better episode titles may emerge 3 podcasts from now when we record that one. But yeah, so we're going to do, because I've definitely got things that I'd like to say about Dishonored 2 that I can't really say before the statutes of limitations on spoilers is lifted or in a safer environment than this. Which is not to say that we won't be banging on about Dishonored a lot. Probably starting very soon.
Oh,
Pip.
hello.
Do we have any news, actually, first and foremost? I can't really think. There doesn't seem to be much. The Overwatch update went up today. So in the now 3 episode long saga of where's Sombra? What's Sombra? Now.
Boop.
It's Sombra. You can go and play her if you can pick her fast enough.
Yeah.
Buy an SSD, load in faster than everyone else, run around as an invisible lady.
You could just, enjoy this part of the ARG, because I'm sure it will move on to something else before
It's
long.
gotten very literal now, hasn't it? It's just a character.
It's just running out of ideas.
Yeah, lame. Other than that, actually, most of the news of the week seems to be, within the realm of video games, it seems to be the struggles of the Dishonored PC version, which as of the time of recording this still hasn't been patched, which is a shame because I know a lot of people are having trouble with it. It's a real weird one for me because I've played the entire game now and had no problems whatsoever on a pretty high-end PC, and then on my very, very mid-range PC at work, it works fine as well. But that said, people with exactly the same mid-range PC at work also have real problems. So I don't know.
My
basically.
PC doesn't like it very much, but I don't know whether that's just because my graphics card is creaky and old and full of squirrels.
That was your first problem, I think. But yeah, so that's still a thing that mars it slightly. But other than that, it's a very good computer game. So Pip, I just walked in to see if you were ready to record this podcast. You were playing Dishonored. You were engrossed. And you said, it's a bit tense. You said,
well,
while you deposited a sleeping civilian onto a pile of other sleeping civilians.
Some of them were dead.
And a few dead people.
And a lot of them were overseers. Only 3 of them
A lot
were
of the
civilians.
dead ones were overseers.
Half the dead ones.
In the office of an overseer.
Yes.
And I understand that you are attempting a non-lethal playthrough.
Yeah. A low chaos stealth.
How's it going? Why are all those people in that room now?
In terms of my basic Dishonored history, I'd say well. In terms of everybody else's and now the game's metrics, disastrously. But I I'm trying, and the game doesn't seem to want to recognise that, and I don't really feel like that's my fault, you know?
The game definitely does recognise that you're doing stuff. Like, that's
No, but it doesn't recognise that some of it was really not what I was hoping for. And that if certain people had looked in certain other directions, then
none of this would have had to happen.
Would not be on the bottom of a pile of bodies.
So I want to describe some more scenarios I've seen you get into, because honest to God, I think I could bang on, and probably will, about how wonderful I think this game is and how well designed and how it, you know, enables all of these different approaches. But the thing that watching you play it has proven to me is that all of its systems and its internal sort of consistency and how it simulates things work even better when you do not have a plan.
I have a plan!
Okay, actually no, you're alright, that's not fair. When you have a plan, but it keeps going spectacularly wrong for reasons that I don't think would happen to me. So I'll give you an example.
Oh.
You're sneaking along. You can hear through the other side of a wall that there's some overseers who are the operatives of the church or the abbey, breaking into an apartment suspecting there's going to be some proof of witchcraft within. You're not very interested in this. So you attempt to, far reach sort of magic grapple yourself over to a nearby building. That doesn't work because this is like a medium height sort of corrugated spiky fence next to the bit you're trying to get to. So giving up on that, you decide to fling yourself back to the balcony you just came from.
Yeah.
However, the specific angle you choose to do this at sends you flying not only over to the balcony, but loudly through a screen door. Where you skid to a halt. Right behind one of the overseers.
He didn't notice me, so this is stealthy.
Who, for some reason, doesn't notice. The Empress of the Isles.
Tea table or something.
He was looking at a tea table. The Empress of the Isles fly through a window for no reason. Whence she proceeds to choke him out.
Yeah.
And then, on a whim, put him in the sink. Just pop him there in the kitchen
I tried
sink.
to put him in the oven.
You did try and put him in the oven, but you didn't manage.
No, I think I put him on the oven. Maybe in the sink.
He flopped sideways off the oven and into the sink, which is probably fine.
Well, it was mostly because I realised that otherwise if I left his body where it had originally fallen, that other guy would have seen it. The one that was looking at the bookcase would have probably turned around and been like, what's happened to Gerald? And so I needed to put him somewhere.
I think the thing I love most about this entire thing is the way that the game's like really laudably consistent internal logic matches up against your remarkably consistent internal logic. Because in another game, like, it wouldn't necessarily have the simulation to say that when you're using far reach, you're moving at this velocity, therefore you hit with this much impact, which is enough to break a screen door and send you flying through it. That would probably be level geometry. Or it'd be something that you needed to hit with a weapon in order for the game to register that you wanted to break it down. But it has enabled these spectacular moments of, like, slapstick calamity.
Yeah, what was the other thing that happened?
So, problem one, the first thing that happened was right after you get your sword in a relatively tender moment. I hope it's okay that I'm telling these stories, by the way.
Oh, no, it's absolutely fine. People should know that I started playing it again because, like, reasons.
Yeah. Right after you get your sword, in a tender moment of, you know, the beginning of this revenge quest, I think, so did you forget the button to sword, or were you just, like...
I was just swishing it.
You were swishing. You've picked up the sword for the first time, and you immediately done a swish. However, you swished directly at a wall, which made a really loud clang, and this is literally the first thing you've done in the game. And then immediately behind you hear two guards go, "What the hell was that?" and come running. At which point...
I was going to show you how stealthy I was.
At which point, you haphazardly butcher them.
Yeah, I forgot most of the buttons at that point.
So it's just slashing.
Yeah.
And then you stack them all on a bed.
Yeah.
Sort of nestled in each other's legs.
Yeah.
And then I told you, that's your bed, you know, that's the Empress's bedroom. At which point you get on the bed and start jumping up and down.
I wanted to see if it had any give.
Did it?
No.
Yeah.
No, it was just a surface. There was no sort of, spring to my step more than usual.
You had just killed 3 men. No, actually, no, you killed 2 men.
Yes.
And you fetched a nearby body that happened to have died during the coup. I actually forgot to mention that before any of this happened, when you walked up to the fallen ally who had your sword, you were carrying a body for no reason.
Oh yeah. I was gonna move it, and I thought it might help. I don't know what I thought I was doing, to be honest. No, I thought I was going to choke out the guy who wanders around at the top of the staircase, and then I was going to drop one of the bodies down into the room below to distract the guard that in my initial playthrough I chopped the arm off, and then choke him out while he was peering at the body, being like, where did that come from, you know?
So the next thing that happened, after you'd escaped and you're outside in the outside area, and you successfully took down a guard non-lethally. So you landed on his knee first and knocked him out. Then you picked him up because you really have never seen an unconscious body you don't want to carry around somewhere.
Well, I just like the idea of having a bit of heft, you know? I like carrying things over my shoulders.
Big sack of spuds.
Well, no, they're kind of warm and heavy and a bit of a dead weight and...
It's like a teddy.
Yeah.
Like a 200-pound man teddy.
But don't you feel a bit naked without carrying things?
No.
Interesting.
This is a side of you I don't think I've ever seen. So then anyway, so this, you'd mercifully...
Going out without your handbag.
Literally man bag.
Yeah.
So you'd mercifully, avoided taking this guy's life, and you jump up on a little roof overlooking the next area where there's a couple of patrolling guards.
Oh no.
At which point, you for no reason throw the body overhand.
Yeah.
Where it falls 3 stories to the streets below, and then you look down at it for a bit.
He was a distraction. That was it.
No one was distracted by it, Pip.
So I thought that if he was distracted, then I could go around him while he was investigating. You see, this was no idle plan. It was.
So how did it go?
A lot of people died. So I think 4 people died. 5?
I think it was 4. And then...
So it was the 3 that were having a conversation at the top of the stairs.
Yeah.
And then it was that other guy.
The guy from the armory.
And then there was the guy who came over when I accidentally shot the pistol.
I'd forgotten that you'd accidentally fired a gun in the air.
So 5.
5 people. 5 dead. And then...
But that was before I threw the grenade by accident. Well, no, that was less of an accident, but then I realised that, because I was holding the button down, and then I wasn't sure at what point it would go off. I think there's a marker on screen, but I wasn't sure of the grace period, so I threw it, and I thought that maybe it would kill those 2 guys, because I figured I'd already mucked up the playthrough on that mission enough that I was going to get... Well, yeah, essentially. But then they didn't die. I managed to throw it to the point where they didn't die. And then they came and they investigated me right in the face. And so I ran. And pretty much everything ended the same way as it did last time, with me just booking it and hitting the water and then just, swimming.
Drive,
away.
You sucked the boat.
Yeah.
So, it's been interesting because, I've just started my second playthrough, which I'm doing a Corvo run, which is a little bit more high chaos. And so
I did try and take someone out stealthily, by the way, from a canopy. But I missed and I fell down behind him, but then he turned round and I forgot the button for my sword. So I got out a spyglass and suddenly it was really close up to him, and then he stabbed me and I had to restart from a checkpoint.
Oh dear.
That's how I then took him out, though. I far reached to just behind him and then choked him out and put him in the nest of people.
The people nest.
Yeah. Oh my god. Although someone came up the stairs to the people nest and was horrified. So I choked him out and added him to the
nest.
Well, I mean, I couldn't really let him go, could I? Like, what was his... I don't know. I ate all their plantains. Yeah. It was really cute, because upstairs you've got the interrogation room, which wasn't cute. And then, like, to the side, you've got, like, all of these little offices with typewriters and things, and one of them had a banana on its desk. Just for lunch.
That was someone's lunch.
I know. But he's not gonna use it, is he?
Probably dead now, isn't he?
No, I think those two were unconscious.
Okay.
The upstairs two are definitely unconscious.
Really? Because when I saw... Well, because, I mean, I think we skipped over how you ended up in that overseer's office.
Oh.
And it was because you did eventually make it over to the balcony that you'd initially been trying to get on to before the screen door incident.
Oh, yeah.
But when you landed on that balcony, you didn't realise that you'd be standing directly in front of an overseer who was like, "Oi!" and then pointed a gun at you. And he responded to this by aiming far reach up and above his head, which ended up throwing you through a window again into the overseer's office, dodging the first overseer by just entering a room full of overseers and killing all of them.
3 of them. I was proud of that.
That was the room you would subsequently create the nest in, right?
Yeah. Well, I'd started. There were 3 already. It felt like a good, like, what's that word? Like the seed?
Or a seed, I guess.
Yeah, like it felt like a decent deposit, you know?
3 in the hand is worth...
Well,
one
8 in the hand eventually, or whatever it was. You know, yeah. Or, no, I think it was about 9 by the end. Oh, it's such a disaster.
So the game, you know, I like the first game, it tracks your sort of decisions and stuff through high chaos and low chaos, which factors in some of the big sort of decisions, like, you know, binary decisions you can make about the fate of characters, but also how you play generally. And it affects how characters talk to you. It actually affects quite a lot about the state of the world and stuff. There's a lot of really interesting reactive stuff in the game. But one mistake I think they've made is that high chaos kind of assumes quite a lot of intent on your part. It assumes that the things you've done that create chaos weren't accidents.
It's quite sweet, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like...
It's like you meant to do this.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And, because I mean, I'm hitting this a bit as well, because I'm playing I've done the very opening of the game as a pretty lethal Corvo, and that put me on high chaos, and that results in the outsider telling you, like, you love killing, don't you? You can't get enough of this. You were born to fight and kill people. All those years not killing people, that must have sucked. And really, it's just like, I'm actually doing what I can to protect my people, and sometimes that means stabbing people in the neck. But equally, if the outsider turns to you and say, like, you can't get enough, this is what you were born for, the blood, the fury, the thirst for revenge, it's like, no, I didn't know how to use the screen door, now everyone's dead.
Yeah.
So I think what they should do for Dishonored 3, which will hopefully happen, is it should be listening to your microphone the entire time.
No.
And if it hears you go, "Oh shit," after you kill somebody, or bollocks, then it factors that in differently. And you probably still end up in high chaos, but it's more like, the fuck are you doing, Emily?
I also think maybe it could track how much you're actually looking at your opponents as you swish your sword around. 'Cause, like, there was a certain amount of most of my fights where I'm not looking in the right direction at all. Like, up, down, around, just, you know, charging forwards. Like, I've usually maybe used far reach by accident at this point, and I'm on the other side of the room facing a door. It's, the whole thing is a bit stressful. I do find it very stressful.
The important thing though is, are you enjoying it? Because you played and finished Dishonored 1, right? Like
I did, yes. I find it enjoyable up to a point. Like, I really like the story and all of that stuff, but, like, because I know that these things are always going to take me a billion years to get right, and, you know, all of that stuff, like, I think it means that I need to be far more in the right frame of mind than I do with something else. Like, when I was super into Oblivion, like, I could just boot that up and it would generally find me a thing to do that fitted where I was at, or the amount of skill I had at any given time. But I think so for example with this, I mean, joking aside, I have been trying to get through that level for about an hour, you know, and I haven't been stopping to do side quest type things particularly, except for the thing that I'm trying to do that involves finding a dentist's office, which I'd not realised that you could just see on your map.
A lot of people have died on the way to that dentist's office.
Yeah, but knowing that that will take me upwards of an hour and lots of sort of faffing and several restarts, like, I think it does become a bit of a different prospect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's something a lightweight thing. I think also it's kind of like, because I think, you know, I really do enjoy watching you play it, and obviously, you know, some funny stories come from it, but part of it's like, you experience that game so differently to me. Really differently. But it's nice, cause like, there's a lot of, you know, I love Dishonored, and you know, that's a classic example of a game that I would happily put in front of somebody and say like, this is loads of things I love about games all at once. In terms of the design, but also the way it looks and the you know, the artistic credibility of it as well as the design stuff. And, you know, but you don't have to play it like I play it in order to get a good experience out of it. Like, it seems to adapt to reflect different personalities really well. Cause it's not telling you no. That's the crucial thing. It's not saying you've done it wrong, try again. Like, and that's, I think you wouldn't like it if it was ever like, if it ever had like an instant fail stealth section or something.
Well, I think that's why I will play this, but I won't play Hitman or something.
Yeah.
Because, mate, know your limits. So I think, and I certainly prefer it when someone else is there, because in some ways it means that what I've done, like, even though it would have been the same whether there was somebody there or not, you know, it's not, it's not just tragedy after tragedy. It's something that is also entertaining for another person.
Yeah.
Rather than, you know, 3 hours of just corpses gradually mounting up and sort of, I guess there's something so that feels like it needs to be social about that. You know, you either make it into an anecdote or you play it with a friend sort of watching over your shoulder, or, you know, via, I don't know, like Steam, friend streaming,
yeah,
broadcasting, whatever it is, or Twitch or something. But it's, I think when you are as prone to disaster as I am when I'm playing it, on its own, that can start to not pull exactly, but like when I think you need someone to share that with, because it's not an exercise in skill that you're sort of proving something to yourself, or you are being inventive or particularly skillful, you know? So I think when it's a bit haphazard and when it's disastrous, it does lose a little something, when it's just you.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. Like, particularly because you seem really stressed out doing things that I think are hilarious. But that's maybe what's so funny. I can see that. And I think maybe it's a little bit of a shame that, you know, it's the way you approach it is going to push the game into showing you its sort of darkest side, because it's assuming that you're approaching it like a bloodthirsty killer who wants to murder everybody. Rather
I had the same thing with the original.
Yeah. To the extent that, like, you know, they think they've done a really good job. I think it's a really good case study in how to modernize a super old genre of PC game that was used to be sort of defined by its difficulty in some ways. Like, loads of the same design ideas as something like Dark Souls, to be honest. Like, the idea that you're supposed to get lost in these maps and you're supposed to feel overwhelmed by them and be consulting either hand-drawn maps that you've made or that the game has given you in order to just know what the fuck is going on, and like combat systems that would kill you a million times before you could progress. Like, loads of old school, there's a through line from Ultima Underworld, which is, you know, an RPG dungeon crawler, through to Thief and System Shock and BioShock, and this whole family tree of games that started off as like super hardcore and, you know, went away, I think, because publishers didn't feel they were a safe bet. They wanted to give you a corridor that you could shoot down. And Dishonored in its sort of out of the box state, does loads of stuff to be exactly that game, but to make it accessible by giving you really clear markers where stuff is and constant objectives and little micro steps to kind of tease you into it. And it has an easy mode, which is explicitly said, like, and I think laudably so, it doesn't say like, this is for rubbish babies or whatever, like some of the easy modes do. It says choose this if you want the narrative and to enjoy the world and not to worry too much about the other stuff, which is a really good attitude. And so it has that as well. So, I think you're playing on medium.
Yeah.
But easy is there as well to kind of allow people to just play it. So it doesn't actually alienating anyone with how difficult it is. But I think maybe then the chaos system is the only sort of vestige where that doesn't quite work. What it feels like it needs, weirdly, is the ability to toggle chaos off and for the game to always assume low chaos. Basically, for you to be able to get for you to be able to have a story where characters respond to you as if you're the good guy, but you're free to solve problems in your own, with however is comfortable to you as a player. Because, no spoilers, but you're going to have a lot of people tell you, I'm surprised you're such a bloodthirsty revenge killer.
I think I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I'm not sure how comfy I would be if the game never acknowledged how badly I kept fucking up. Like, if there is a pile of bodies, in my wake about, 3 stories deep, then I think it's fair that the game acknowledges that. Like, how it then responds is maybe the different thing. Like, maybe it's that thing of, it taking other factors into consideration when it sort of hands you your motive. Like, if, if you were clearly also doing side quests that were helping people, then maybe it would be able to intuit that, it was more of a, you're trying to get stuff done, but ultimately you believe in justice. Yeah, I mean,
maybe the solution is some sort of just different weighting and how it rewards stuff, because that stuff is in there. Like, there are things you can do that presumably lower chaos because you're also helping. But I don't know if any of those things will outweigh a building full of dead overseers.
No, I don't think I've killed a single civilian, though.
No, that's true. But I'm talking about the sort of the way it weights those things. So, maybe then it doesn't need switch chaos off. It says, just, calibrate this to means well. Like,
maybe they should make you do that first mission and then use that as an average, like how people do for lie detector tests. You have to establish the baseline.
Yeah.
So that would be your baseline, and it would essentially be like, okay.
Have a character at the end of that say, okay, so what were you, maybe even have the outsider say, rather than, because he jumps into a speech based on whether or not you take a low or high chaos approach to that first mission. Rather than have him say that, just have a little dialogue moment where he says, so what were you trying to do? And you're like, I wanted to get out of the palace without killing somebody. And then it matches that up with what actually happened and goes, okay. And maybe it doesn't change things straight away, but it gives it a sense of what you're like, that's what non-lethal looks like. I see. Okay. 11 people died.
Or maybe you'd have a trial at the end or something to answer to your crimes.
Yeah, like a Chrono Trigger. You ate every grape in Serconis, you mad woman.
I ate all the bananas.
Something I would say, and I'm still unpacking all my thoughts about it, because I think, it's a game of like nested complexity. Like there's so much going on under the hood, like all of the time to sort of determine that chaos rating and stuff. Like, as far as I'm aware, so you have the heart, which allows you to see the thought, like in the first game, allows you to hear the thoughts and backgrounds of people around you. And I believe that the amount of chaos you generate by killing people is commensurate with how innocent they are. And that is not on a named character by named character basis. That's based on individual guards. So if you point it at a guard and it says, this guy's a wanker, then it doesn't have as much of an effect on the world to kill him as it would if you point it at him and he's like, he loves puppies. And I mean, I could bang on for hours about the stuff it does with the heart and how many things you can uncover ahead of time and how so densely written it is.
I don't usually use the heart much, but it's because I find the act of switching a bit awkward.
Yeah.
Like, I remember the first one I was playing it using an Xbox pad, and I feel like I remember it being easier than...
It worked the same way.
Yeah, maybe I'm just... Oh, I think, well, because I tried to switch to keyboard because the aiming felt off with the pad, so... Although I found, like, the Alt Control and C and things like that felt clunky. Like, I felt like my little finger was having to try and do too much with the control system. I don't know if you found that, or whether being left-handed it's different, or...
I'm quite used to games that use C for crouch. Like, I always put crouch on C anyway, so I'm not the best judge of that. The only thing I've ever always done with Dishonored controls is reverse the mouse buttons. Because by default, it always weirds me out. So, your sword is in your right hand, and either your gun, your crossbow, or your power is in your left hand. But the sword is on the left mouse button, and the power, gun, etc. is on the right. So the hands are reversed relative to the mouse buttons, basically. So I always reverse the mouse buttons, so they correspond to the hands. So right mouse button is sword, because that's in your right hand, and left mouse button is power, because it's in your left hand. But that's me being weird. But yeah, I mean, the good thing about it is, like I say, like it caters to loads of different playstyles, and it unfolds most of itself the slower you take it, I think. But there's nothing stopping you, just moving through it at your own pace. And also, unlike the first game, because it has two main characters, and even though they do the same missions, they have, substantially different dialogue because they're different people. And different attitudes, and that depends on high chaos and low chaos as well. Like, I think when I finished Dishonored 1, I started playing again, because I loved it so much. But this time, starting playing it again, it's like, oh, it's a new game. Even though I'm doing the same stuff, like, it feels different being Corvo. Like, I played Emily as someone who, it makes a difference, like, I always think about who the character is. So for me, Emily's like, she's not a killer when the game starts. Like, she's an empress, and she's been trained to run around on rooftops, but she's probably never killed someone before. So, like, I did my best not to kill people. And I did over the course of the playthrough for reasons that I'll talk about in the spoiler cast. But, like, it felt interesting playing it as someone who's, like, wasn't born to be an assassin and is trying to be clever and solve situations with sort of tricks and stuff. And now I'm playing as Corvo, who is a killer and is established as a killer pretty fucking quickly. And so, shit's gone wrong again. They've threatened your daughter. Time to stab some fuckers. And that's what I'm doing now. And it feels so different. And I think that's because you can take it, quickly or slowly and solve problems in so many different ways. And something that I think, really impressed me this time around is because they've really successfully expanded the tools you have to approach situations non-lethally. So every situation that has a potential for an instant kill, some of which are the same as the first game, like dropping on someone, that kind of thing, now have a potential for a non-lethal takedown as well. So, you can, knee drop people, you can, drag people over the ledges and choke them out and so on. You've got lots of powers that have non-lethal options as well. And your powers also, create the situations. So Domino's the famous one where you can link people's fates and knock one person out to knock loads out. And one of the things that means is that, like, fundamentally, like, disaster recovery is always possible and often in, like, quite exciting, dramatic ways, even if you don't want to kill people. And that in turn makes it, like, I don't think it's an easy game, but it's probably way more forgiving because you're very, really powerful. Like, if you, like, you've experienced that definitely because you've had situations where you've been caught or you've been ganged up on by guards, and even if you're just still getting to grips with fighting,
I really shouldn't have survived any of that if there had been any justice.
Well, I don't think you would have on the harder difficulty settings because they do hit a lot harder.
Yeah.
But,
well, I also use my runes to upgrade my, vitality stat, like, to its maximum. So essentially, like, I have more health and it recharges faster. Yeah.
But, it sort of lets you get away with stuff just in pursuit of allowing you to sort of set your own goals for things. So, the playthrough I'm doing now, I'll probably be quite perfectionist with, not getting seen. Like, I want to do perfect stealth stuff, and that means some quick loading. My first playthrough, I tried to avoid quick loading too much in pursuit of sort of letting what happened. Unless it was like something was like a bit broken. So if I like fucked up or just fell off a roof for no reason, I probably wouldn't live with that. If I survived on like 1% health or something, That'd be a time to quick load. I did have one situation where I couldn't for the life of me save one fucking guy. Where I was trying to, and I just ended up using quick load just to sort of experiment with the systems a bit. Because there's a situation where you have one guy who's like standing on a cliff looking out over the sea. He's on guard. And then behind him, sitting on a crate, facing the door you come in, there's only one way in, is a guard. And, and I don't want to get spotted, so that's sort of criteria number one is I don't want to get spotted, so I don't want to just take out the guy behind him and then, rush down the other guy while he turns around or something. But what I find is that if I make an incredibly loud noise, the guy standing by the cliff is so surprised he falls off a cliff and dies. If I domino them together and peek around the corner and tranquilize the guy sitting facing me, the other guy falls asleep, falls off a cliff and dies. Sometimes he's so surprised he falls off the cliff and dies, and then because they're linked together, the fall also kills the other guy as well. Who just sometimes while I'm choking him out, so he kind of goes and that's that. And in the end, I had to find a point in the preceding corridor, place a stun mine on a box, domino them together, find a point in the preceding corridor where I could smack the wall with my sword in a way that only the guy sitting on the box could hear it. He would come and investigate, at which, and get electrocuted by the stun mine, at which point I had a fraction of a second to far reach over to the guy who would now also be getting electrocuted. And as he starts to sort of tumble forward off a cliff, hold down the key to grab his body and hoist him over my shoulder and save his life. And he had no idea what I'd been through to make sure that those two guys are taken out non-lethally, but without me being seen.
Corvo would have bothered.
Corvo's not going to fucking bother.
Oh, okay.
Emily bothered. Yeah, actually, in that situation, it would be much easier for Corvo with stop time would solve that. Emily not having stop time is the thing that stops her from, makes her the most interesting. Not more interesting than Corvo, but she has, her powers are amazing, but the time stuff is such a game changer for Corvo that you feel it when it's gone.
Well, you can bring up your inventory and slow time.
Yeah, true. You can pause by, or very extremely slow time by changing your weapon, but it's not the same tool because you obviously got move or anything like that.
No, but still, yeah. I think thinking about it, you know how I can't remember anything about the original game?
Yeah.
Or the plot or really what happened. I'm thinking that it's partly because, so I remember the feeling of being in the world, and I think it's because I've spent a lot of time in that world, but because I'm so bent on getting to the next marker, to the next thing, the actual overarching plot or the sense of the meta narrative just gets completely lost because I'm so kind of, how do I get around this next corner? How do I get to this next building? It eventually just becomes a series of one foot after the other. Until I get to this next thing on the map, or this next objective gets crossed off, or this next cutscene kicks in. And, so I sit and I listen to those, the outsider banging on about whatever it is, or, there's another cutscene, or there's an explanation, or I read the bits and pieces. But ultimately, it's very hard to keep track of those things, given that I think just they make up such a tiny fraction of my playthrough. The rest is all just, wandering down corridors and killing people or trying not to kill people or, all of that stuff. And so I do think it can be very hard to keep track of the game that's actually unfolding as a result of the things that you're doing.
Yeah, that's fair. Have you been able to take in the environments much?
Some and some. I've had nice moments where I can look out at a vista or, look at the water or whatever else, and enjoy particular effects or enjoy the sense of place in a particular bit. But I think, first of all, I'm not far enough in to have senses of distinct places. So all I really know is the Karnaca docks and the throne room and streets of Dunwall. And so that's not really enough to base a judgment on. I think at the moment it hasn't really felt meaningfully different from the original game. And I don't know whether that's just because they both have that same strong identity, like aesthetic DNA running through them. And it was really lovely seeing Delilah turn up. I don't think that's a spoiler because she's been in
the
so
trailers,
much of the marketing. And so it's a weird thing. Like, I've enjoyed seeing the graphics just be better as well, because I think it helps communicate more of what they were aiming for. But I think I haven't really. The docks in Karnaca are sort of obviously sun bleached, and they've got loads of sort of whale bits and pieces and entrails, and it's very much a sense of a run down, very much a busy, really grimy, grotty, but also bright and hot kind of area. But at the same time, there's a kind of, I don't quite know how to put it, but it's a similar feeling that you get across all of Dishonored stuff, I find. And
there's definitely a sort of thematic, I guess, identity or something to it.
I don't quite know how to say it, but I think it doesn't feel as different, like the setting doesn't feel as different as I was expecting it to.
It has more substantially different set pieces than the first game, but you haven't really got to that yet. Like, it has individual environments that have more going on in them.
Yeah, there are some levels that I've heard fellow journalists talk about that sound like they are going to kick that up a gear. And this is far more just standard environment almost. Yeah,
like Streets of Karnaca or something you're going to encounter over again, different times of day and stuff, and different sort of context. I think it's extraordinary. Like, I really can't think of another game that has that substantially detailed and like urban environment necessarily. Like the amount of, places you can go and just look in, and the amount of sort of nested detail in every corner is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm being dismissive of the game or that I'm being lukewarm towards it. I think it is phenomenal. It's also something where I have a very different experience than you, I think. And I think some of, my own shortcomings when it comes to the genre mean that I find it harder to be totally swept away by it.
I think
because it's kind of hard to have a serious gaming experience when so much ridiculousness has piled up,
I was going to say, there's a few, like, obviously there's the sort of the calamity.
Moments.
There's a sort of calamity aspect of it, which I think stops certain things that would maybe be sort of moments of, like, a reveal or something from maybe having the poignancy that they might otherwise have because you're too busy, like, killing 15 people.
Well, even at first, the first thing that happens, so I don't, do you think it's okay to talk about what happens when you first get your sword?
I mean, yeah, I guess, yeah.
So when you go when you've escaped a room and are trying to sort of find a way out of where you've been held captive, you go along a little corridor, and somebody that was sort of clearly your friend, as part of the original cutscene, is there having been stabbed and is dying while she gives you a bit of essential plot information. And I think if I'd been playing it probably like you or like any normal person, it would have been, I think, a poignant moment, or at least, one with a certain amount of gravitas. Or even just, a neutral thing. But for me, I was wondering where the guard that I'd been carrying had gone, because that cutscene does not allow you to have a guard's bum kind of protruding into frame, and so it automatically drops him. So instead of kind of listening to her, I was wondering about my guard.
Yeah.
And then, immediately afterwards, I had, summoned the other two, and it was all just a bit of a cluster pickle.
It was a cluster pickle. It was definitely a cluster pickle.
And so I think that does undercut, some of the, the storytelling beats.
Yeah, I think I approach it in a way that emphasizes storytelling because it's important to me, so I give it space to sort of tell its story and stuff. I think it also helps that,
This is not a choice on my part, by the way. I would play it on its own terms. It's just that's impossible.
Pip terms. Get in the way.
Yeah.
But, also, one thing is that, and maybe this is sort of inching towards a criticism of it, because I did really love it, but I think, it hasn't 100% solved some of Dishonored's. So the open question here is this a problem? Because basically, it is sort of possible to solve Dishonored, and there are a million different solutions to it. But in a given playthrough, based on what you're trying to achieve, there's probably some combination of gadgets and powers that you will have reliable access to that will work in most situations. And it'll introduce some mechanics or new enemy types and things to kind of make you think about them slightly differently. But, and the higher difficulty settings make it easier to be detected and give enemies more awareness. But ultimately, there are certain, constants that are, part of the language of Dishonored, and it's gotten, really, and this will sound the nerdiest thing because the granular level of this, but when they moved to Karnaca, they moved from a sort of London-inspired environment to a Mediterranean-inspired environment. And therefore from sort of, slanting rooftops to flat rooftops. And that I thought was brilliant because it means you can suddenly put guards and guard posts on rooftops, which they do. But the sort of the way the levels are designed means there's always somewhere you can get to above that as well. And height is the thing in Dishonored. Being up high allows you to get past so much stuff a lot of the time. And there are definitely, it does, guards look up far more now than they used to, and they've done little things, but I did find that big chunks of the game I was able to sort of glide past relatively easily just because I knew what to look for in terms of overhead routes. And I also knew which upgrades to specialize in early in order to make sure that I could get to them. And for a while, there were some considerations when Emily's using far reach to grapple somewhere, she's still visible when she's moving, whereas Corvo, when he blinks, just teleports. But there's a rune you can get, upgrade charm later on, that means that Emily's invisible while she's grappling, which, helps a lot. And so a lot of these games, you can end up in a situation where, the challenge doesn't really come from getting past stuff anymore. It comes from, how you do it and how you, how happy you are with your approach. And I think I would have maybe liked them to do a little bit more to kind of create more of a problem solving element rather than it being just a sandbox, even on the hardest setting. But I don't necessarily know that's a problem because I do think if they do that in order to create a challenge for people who have played hundreds and hundreds of hours of this stuff, then inevitably they're going to probably create really unpleasant situations for people who want to just play at their own pace.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because the reason I got onto that is because I love the environments in that game and I spend loads of time looking at them and kind of trying to soak them in, just listening to the civilians talk and stuff like that, because I spend a lot of time sat on top of lampposts waiting for patterns to shift and for a little, an opportunity to open itself, or trying to figure out what the next jump is going to be or the route I'm going to take. And I think the stealth, the environmental detail and the ambient stuff is there to give you something to think about while you're waiting. But if you're not the type of player who waits, and particularly if you're the type of player who spends a lot of time on the ground, then you're going to spend a lot more time fighting, being seen, hiding, looking at the inside of a box, waiting to get past. And so necessarily you'll take less of it in. And that's not necessarily I don't know how the game can do that better. I don't know how it can give you both all of the time. But it's certainly maybe I would understand why someone had played through that game and didn't notice that it had these amazing environments or all this incidental story detail. because it completely allows you to miss it, which I guess is a strength and a weakness at the same time.
I think I pick up on bits of it, because I will always, like, try and read the bits, or, you know, try and absorb some of the environmental storytelling, even if it's just that I'm, like, faffing and I don't know what to do next, and I'm waiting to see the way forward, I think. It's interesting though, because I think that some of the things that you've said could be solved just by having a few more modules even, of types of lookout, you know? So you're saying about there being guard towers or guard lookouts where essentially all you need to do is get up higher than them, and then, you know, you've got the jump on them, or you can start fiddling around. But I mean, one way to deal with that is to put one where there isn't higher ground, and then just see what people do, or don't give it a roof, or don't, you know, those kinds of bits and pieces, and just sort of challenge people to, you know, obviously you'd have other routes around it, but that kind of thing would, having one or two of those peppered throughout might prove to be an interesting challenge for people like you who will mine it out for the optimal routes and the absolute perfect stealth playthrough and things.
And I think the other thing about it is it allows you to do weird shit with the powers in a way that will probably ultimately someone will find a way to bypass anything they do. So maybe it's best for them to just structure the world naturally and sort of let the player figure themselves around it. Like I figured something out, which is, you know, those spiky fences that you encountered are designed as, I think, a little sort of indicator of like, find another way around this. Going over probably isn't going to work because you can't mantle them. But through a combination of upgrades later, I figured out that it is possible as Emily to fling yourself like a slingshot by using far reach in a particular way, but it involves a combination of upgrades I don't really want to spoil. But like, there's a way of doing it which involves sort of dropping and then almost like pole vaulting over the far reach tendril, if that makes sense. And, like a crucial bit of the game, a crucial infiltration, I could see the hard route stretching out in front of me, and then I could see that if I did this particular jump fling technique, I could basically throw myself over the area. And doing that felt like, again, like I've just bypassed 10 guards and an entire stealth bit. But again, it felt like, and I should be allowed to do that because I've done a thing, you know, and I know that, for example, like, you know, unlike the first game, this game allows you to refuse magic powers.
Yeah.
I don't know how that changes that story at all, but, I'm definitely going to do it probably for my third playthrough. And I know that I'm going to, like, I don't really feel like I've missed out on game, I guess, because I'm going to go back to that level one day and I'm not going to have the ability to like magic grapple myself over a fence. I'm going to have to sneak past and pretend it's thief.
I think it's one of those things though where, I think that particularly with Dishonored, but with other games of that type, the people who are ridiculously good at them will figure out both the shortcut, but will also want the challenge of the no powers thing or the, you know, figuring it out the other way. So I don't think it precludes that stuff. It just means that if you can exploit those powers in that particular way, you get the reward for being able to do that.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, that doesn't feel like a problem. It's more that I guess at a certain point you are going to want to try and do different things. Like with, you know, like with a fighting game, if you've mastered the combo and your friend hasn't, then why would you stop doing that if you wanted to win? But again, you know, maybe you'd want to do other bits and pieces just to see whether you could, or to get some practice in, or to...
I think that's a good analogy, actually. I think the fact, because it, like, you know, I hit on my particular combination of ways to take down a room full of people reliably, which is mostly using domino and a mixture of other things. And it was basically always domino, and what other thing I need to do will differ based on the exact configuration of the room. And sometimes I just mix it up for fun. And And there was definitely a point in, like, the game. It took me 16 hours to beat it the first time. So even though it's, you know, you could probably race through it, it's not a short game by any means. There was definitely a point where I was like, I'm kind of bored of dominoing an entire room and making them all go to sleep. Even though that approach would still sometimes create situations, particularly if I missed somebody and someone see everyone fall asleep in a room and go like, whoa. And ultimately, though, the onus is on me to go like, well, if I'm bored of this approach, change it. And that's an interesting pressure. Like, Dishonored's not the only game to encounter that like, where you know, it's possible to say, I was bored by this bit, but for the game to go and do it differently. And that's always, you know, it's always, I think, not necessarily cut and dried who's responsible for providing alternatives there, whether the game it's on the game to say, to force you to do something different or more interesting, like, you know, just praised the hell out of Titanfall 2 for giving you interesting options, giving you new toys, and then taking them away again and forcing you to do something else. But they're very different, I think, because Dishonored gives you all of your toys and you just like do whatever the fuck you want to solve this level, however the hell you want. And I mean, that's why, you know, Tom Francis will play it forever, because that's what he looks for. And I can appreciate both, I guess. But as you say, there's nothing stopping me playing it again as a new character or going back to the same save files and trying it a different way.
I'll probably get through it as Emily this one time, and then that will probably be it.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying it for sure. I think it's just that I clearly haven't found my stride with it the same way that you have. And obviously that's partly because you are a very different kind of game player than I am, but also because I am still so early on that I haven't necessarily formed attachments to these characters, because there's been so much time with not exactly the busy work, but the parts that I remember where you're just standing, watching, waiting, commiserating. And so much less of it has been spent learning who they are, if that makes sense. Because, I mean, Emily chats a lot about, you know, ambient objects, or, you know, she'll have opinions about things or whatever else. And so she's kind of always there. But because my style doesn't vary based on who I'm playing, because it's the only style that I can do. Like I try for stealth, and that is where I end up regardless of who I am playing. So I don't have your ability or the luxury of, I don't think Corvo would do this, or I don't think Emily would do this, but she would do this.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like I'm making meaningful choices based on those characters. And so I think I'm seeing less of the parts that make this an Emily playthrough. Because it feels to me just as chaotic as my Corvo playing of the original game.
Yeah, it's a mad family.
Yeah, maybe it's just, well, she's her father's daughter.
Stacking all the people, eating all the pears.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've eaten every piece of fruit I've found.
That's very healthy. It's probably the healthiest thing you've done.
Yep. It's been great.
Yeah. I've got, like, there's a lot more to say, for me about, I always never know what angle to attack that game from, because there's so much I really love, and like, I'm looking forward to when we get onto the spoiler stuff of talking a bit more about the plot and the writing, because that's a whole side to it that I want to praise it for, particularly for not only the diversity of its cast, but also some actual meaningful thematic stuff it does, which I think puts it heads and shoulders above a lot of other, you know, big budget adventure game stories. But that's for a time where I can actually talk about stuff, what people say and do in the computer gam.
And that's next week then.
Yeah, that's definitely next week. And also some solutions to things and some interesting design decisions.
I'll have to get a wiggle on.
You have to get a wiggle on. You got to finish it. Yeah, loads to say. And hopefully we'll have Tom or both Toms here to discuss horrible things they've figured out how to do with Power Set.
I expect Tom Francis would just be able to like give an entire presentation about like terrible things he has done to other people.
Well, one thing that he's figured out how to do, this isn't a spoiler because I don't think the powers count as spoilers necessarily. One of Emily's powers is doppelganger, which allows you to create a duplicate of yourself that runs away, basically. So you can use it to lead guards away and stuff. And it's got some variants, but it's also a sort of physical human in the world. So you can do a lot of things to it that you can also do to other physical humans, and that links with the other powers in interesting ways. But Tom has figured out that if you're falling to your death, you can cast doppelganger on the ground below you and then drop assassinate yourself to survive.
That's so cool.
Which is mad.
Wow.
So like you actually land on Emily and slit her throat. Because that doing so means you don't take falling damage.
See, Tom and I are very different people.
Yeah.
Entirely opposite people.
Yeah, to use your parlance. Opposite of Pip is Tom.
It really is.
But that's an hour on Dishonored. You've also been playing through loads of Proc Jam stuff, right?
I've been trying to sift through bits of it, yeah. It's been a good year, I feel.
A good crop.
A good crop.
Crop jam.
Also, partly because that's an anagram.
It is an anagram.
Partly because I think that procedural generation seems to be one of the ways that people can actually try and do things with the natural world, you know, and so you do end up with maybe a tiny little glut of games which let you generate plants and sort of generate other interesting living forms or, you know, bits and pieces. And I really like just that as an idea, but also just the stuff that people have come up with in particular has just seemed really, or the stuff I've gravitated towards rather, has seemed really gentle and beautiful and lovely. And so there was so Tom Betts, who you might know from things like In Ruins, or he also is part of Big Robot, which is Jim's games company. He created a little planetoid generator, so you can change the variables and it spits out a different planet type object. Like some of them are, have cores to them, so they're more sort of like a spherical thing, or at least like almost like a bacterium or a virus or something with bits sticking up from the surface. And others don't even have that core, and they're just sort of clusters of debris that sort of rotate around just a shaft of light in the middle kind of thing. And so those are really lovely to look at, and I just really enjoyed pressing random, you know, for ages and ages. And then there's also a thing called Werewolf in the Wild, I think. And that was really interesting because it was such a basic, procedural generation of terrain, but the sound and the visual style really elevated it because it did feel such a weird foreign experience. And I really liked that I guess it tried to make it a strange, animalistic, interface almost, you know, the graphics were monochrome, but also the light would cause, so rather than it just being a diffuse light that spreads over all of the things, it's this like really thin needle-like shafts of light that sort of bounce off the landscape in a really jagged kind of aggressive way. And the sound itself is really crackly, and you can hear the sort of slavering of a beast sort of panting and running. And I just really liked how that came together with a sense of body that wasn't your normal interface with a game. So that was really cool. I'm trying to think what else there was. There was Groundskeeper. I can't remember if that was actually part of Proc Jam or whether that was a separate thing. I think it might have been a separate thing that just happened to be on Itch.io at the same time. But that was really cool because you plant seeds in little seed beds in an allotment in this, just clearing. I showed it to you earlier, actually. And they grow as these single stem plants, but the bloom of it, sort of is randomly coloured and shaped, and it grows according to whatever arcane mathematics the game has been programmed with. But some of them are these neat, petite kind of water lily looking things, and then others are these absolutely bonkers, blousy things with tendrils that are sort of violet and stick a mile out, It's really, really cool. I really like that one. I spent a lot of time in that one today and this evening. And the other one that I can remember is, what was it? It was the Exhibition of Babel, which is based on the Borges, short story. The Library of Babel, which is, just where the books are every permutation of, a character set, and so it contains everything that is sensible and also nonsensical. And so these are all procedurally generated, abstract kind of paintings that populate this globe, this kind of curved terrain, and each of them is marked with coordinates like south 4, east 5 or whatever, so you can orient yourself a little bit, and they ping into being as these blank canvases, and the longer you look at them, the more intense the colouring of those smears get. Like it doesn't change the actual design, but the longer you look at them, the more intense the colouring gets. And I thought that was really cool, sort of more saturated. But because they are also despawning as much as they're spawning in front of you, in any direction that you walk, it means that you can't navigate your way back by keeping tabs on the things that have already come into being, I guess. And so it's this weird sense of, if you stop looking at something, it goes away. Which was really cool. And you do get slightly disoriented because you can't find your way back just by, I recognize that painting. You have to stop and look, or you have to navigate by the coordinates instead, So those were all really lovely. And then someone pointed me towards something which does an interesting fractal effect with, coastline. So you can use your mouse wheel this is an in-browser thing, and you can use your mouse wheel to zoom in and out of the coastline of an island, but you can just keep zooming in forever because it just keeps, expanding out in that fractal way, and then you can eventually scroll back out to get to the island. But it's just this really cool thing of, I guess, layers within layers, or, surfaces within surfaces. So I think I really like when this happens, because it means that, or when any game jam that seems to make people a bit more able to focus in on strange nature, that's always really nice to see, because I think ultimately those things like flowers or trees or whatever can end up as assets you just buy off a store, or you model a few of and then, use them again and again, which is fine. But I always really love seeing them be the star of the show, or get that variety that you actually see in the real world, I guess, that you sort of can look at a rose bush and it's not the same as all of the other rose bushes on that street or any other rose bush in the world. And yeah, it's just nice to have those moments of focusing in on that stuff. So I would thoroughly recommend sifting through those, because that's what I'll probably be doing for the next few days as well.
And you didn't have to accidentally, on purpose, kill a street full of people.
I did not.
But
no.
Yeah, they sound lovely. Well, we'll put a link in the show notes for all of the
Yeah,
ones that
I've
we've
written
mentioned.
all of those up on RPS, and I'm sure that I'll have done more by the time pod publishing comes around.
Publishing.
So,
Yeah, no, they sound great. I wish I'd taken more time to dip into that stuff because I haven't seen them at all. But
well, I made you watch Groundskeeper over my shoulder.
yeah, that was great. That was great. Such a cool thing.
Yeah. So you should take more of my games recommendations.
Yeah.
Especially on Hidden Object Adventures.
Oh, let's not go there yet. Or
You're
ever.
enjoying it.
Yeah.
Shall we do questions?
Sure.
Great.
Let's do that.
Yes.
We'll rattle through a few that we have answers for, because we have quite a lot of questions that left both of us going, this would be good if there was a Tom here. There is no Tom.
Yeah.
But we shall leave them starred in the inbox of our hopes and dreams. I don't know what I'm talking about.
We'll put the Tom mark on them.
The Tom mark. What excellent Merlot, I thought to myself out loud. Thomas writes, what are the things a game can do to hook you instantly, even if you objectively know that the game is bad? And he puts objectively in scare quotes. How do games exploit you personally? The answer for me is really, really simple. Put them in space.
Yeah, that's you, isn't it?
That's all I am. That's all I am out to, really.
You're just a spaceman. I don't know. I think maybe it could just say, set in Holby City, or, I'd be there in a heartbeat, or, Midsummer Murders, or any of those things, or, a Poirot mystery. That's the subtitle that will just get me
Middle class murder will get you every time.
invest in. Well, it's more daytime TV murder,
Okay.
So some of those.
You're really underserved by that.
I really am, and I have banged on about it on this podcast for long enough.
Yeah, I think I've banged on about spaceships for long enough.
I think there are some puzzle game makers that I will always pick up what they produce. So if,
Makes you sound like you're cleaning up after them. Like Alan Hazelden, not again.
but,
Taking a little baggie out.
he's one. Alan Hazelden and Stephen Lavelle, I would happily, play any puzzle game he deigns to send in my direction, or not. And I would happily play, who's that guy? Is it Matthew Brown who makes, the Hex Cells games? Any of those, I will happily, just pick up on trust, I think. But I don't know whether that's the same as sort of being tricked into something. It's because they're all based on...
There's precedent there, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think it's just, starring anyone from Holby City is probably, or Casualty. The Holbyverse, basically. It's a British medical drama in case anyone's listening from overseas.
Let me pretend I'm in a spaceship and I will play it once. Maybe twice.
Or forever.
Or maybe forever, if you get it right. Zed writes, are RPG skill... I'm starting again. Are RPG skill systems where you do things to get better at them a bad idea or merely boring?
Is life boring?
That's a good question.
Because, you practice things to get better at them. I mean, I had French horn lessons for a year and I wasn't allowed to give them up.
Despite the cries of everyone around you.
It was awful. I was really bad at it.
Didn't get better.
No.
Didn't get better. Didn't level up French horn 10 times, go to sleep and wake up a member of the Dark Brotherhood or something.
No, I mean, I can play Merrily We Roll Along, but it's really bad, and about 1 in every 3 notes is slightly off.
I suppose it's worth sort of observing that games like Oblivion or whatever that try and do this, do the thing to get better at the thing skill system are normally leaning immersive simwoods when it comes to trying to be realistic. But I guess they never end up realistic because reality doesn't work that way. You don't repetitively repeat the same action to get better at something. You actually apply concentration to it and try and improve your technique, and there's a million things that go into getting better at something beyond just repetition. I don't know, if you want to get better in swimming in those games, you just press W on your keyboard while moving through water.
Some of them are more not exactly quick time events, but there is a certain amount of finesse, I think, to some of the activities. Like, I think there was a wood chopping, mini game as part of one of these things. And, if you could press the requisite chopping key when this pendulum was near the middle of its swipe, then, that would be a more efficient way to level up. But, I mean, that's just quibbling, really, because none of that is really like, actually getting better at a thing. So,
like games where you really level up by practicing until you're better are just games with a high skill ceiling, right?
Well,
like,
I assume that this is just, they started off as sort of, stand-ins because people couldn't think of how to do them better, or, they were good enough or whatever. And I wonder whether they just haven't evolved because they are still just about good enough that people don't feel the need to radically overhaul them, because why would you spend time and money, if it ain't completely broke? But also, I think that there's a certain amount of, I've completely forgotten where I was going with that, but, hopefully.
What just happened?
Well, I tried to style it out, but I completely forgot what I was talking about midway through because I was distracted
I'm
by the
amazed
curtains.
that doesn't happen more often on this podcast. I think it does.
I mean, it
really
happens loads in
does.
real life, but I mean,
I thought I'd zoned out. I think everyone had zoned out.
I don't listen to what I'm saying. And this is one of the fundamental problems that you'll realise, is that I'm not listening either.
So where did we, what?
So the question was about whether these things are fundamentally boring, and I was saying that people haven't had the kick up the arse to replace them with something that is more adventurous, I guess, or that is better or more stimulating or even just closer to reality.
They haven't moved closer to reality. I mean, like, most of these systems are gone now, right? Like Skyrim doesn't have a system. And
But I think the other thing is maybe, that's what my point was. The other half of my point was, so I don't think the impetus is there on the developer side of things, because time and money, and it's good enough just about. But on the player side of things, I think maybe people have sort of come to not exactly expect them, but they've become packaged into the genre in a way. You do expect to turn up and be able to get better at crafting just by doing more of it. And so if a game stripped that out, how would people feel? Would they feel like they weren't being rewarded for this thing that they're doing so much of? Or, would it feel like there wasn't a form of, traction with that area of the game because it didn't feel like it had any weight or any meaning or something like that,
That makes sense.
Yeah. I'm glad we finally
Jesus.
eked that one out. I just got so distracted just by the curtains. It's really bad.
This is how people die, Pip, in Dishonored.
Oh.
This is how it starts.
Well, yeah. Sorry.
Juice writes, and he writes a lot of questions. We've picked out one of the many, many questions.
Juice. Like orange juice.
No, it's not like moose, but with a J.
Huh.
I don't think that's his real name. But if it is, sorry. Mrs. Juice, he writes, isn't exactly what you would call a gamer. But since meeting me, she's taken to the spot of occasional gaming. We've played through the entirety of Diablo 2 and 3 together, and enjoyed many relationship testing hours of platforming entertainment in the various LEGO games. But there is something that has presented itself as, so far, an unassailable roadblock. FPS games, more accurately, controlling an FPS with a mouse and keyboard. She's pretty much got the hang of the basics, thanks to my insistence that she give Portal a go, but it still has to be either moving or looking around. I know I wouldn't have thought it'd be possible to complete both Portal games like this either, but apart from a couple of points which she sort of brute forced her way through, she managed fine. The problem I now have is what to recommend to her as a way of training her FPS skills so she can do some strafing and aiming while on the move that would be required in pretty much any other FPS. Everything is either too simple and slow, so she can just continue her current stop and look technique, or too demanding, so she just gets frustrated and gives up. It's like I'm trying to teach her to read, but the only books available are C. Spot Run or Tolstoy. Any suggestions for something that can help bridge that gap?
So War and Spot.
Yeah.
Or C. Tolstoy Run.
I'd read C. Tolstoy Run. I genuinely would.
So I was thinking about this because it was something that I had to learn because for slightly different reasons, that being that I was from more of a console background, and so it was like, what the hell? What is this thing I have to hold in my hand and these keys I need to
Wazd, how dare you?
Ridiculous nonsense. Can I not use it? Like, because once I was just like, oh, can I use the arrow keys? And someone just looked at me like I just crawled out of a swamp. It's like,
had you also just crawled out of a swamp?
No.
What?
Otherwise I'd have been a lot happier. Anyway, and so I was thinking about this, and I think, as far as I can remember, it wasn't so much, I mean, I think I had a bit of an advantage in that I had been using strafing for things like GoldenEye, like way back in the day. But I think that on mouse and keyboard, it still didn't always feel intuitive. And so I found that things like stealth games, like first person stealth stuff, was quite helpful because you sort of strafe out of a hiding spot to see whether the coast was clear and things like that. But they're also a lot slower paced. And so you can sort of hide, and then you can make sure your fingers are on the right keys, and then you do the action, and then you try and work it out from there. And I did actually have a little look online to see if anybody had recommended anything else. And someone mentioned Minecraft, which was interesting because I think it gets, because it's an interesting environment if you've not played it before particularly, you find yourself wanting to learn to move and look at the same time. But then someone else was pointing out that, you know, when you are mining or when you're building, you know, a wall or something, you'll sort of want to learn to strafe just to be able to lay those blocks quicker in a horizontal line and things like that. So I think something like that that only covers the first person element might actually be better in terms of taking the pressure off.
Yeah, Minecraft's a really good shout, actually.
When getting someone to have a wander around. And also, I mean, even just stuff like CSGO maps, I mean, that's, you know, that stuff is really intense, but you could maybe set up like a bot game and start like looking at the basics of peering around obstacles or, you know, all of that kind of stuff.
That is pretty deep end though, even against bots.
It is.
And maybe a bit thematically risky given that it's so kind of modern military.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and it's obviously the complete other end of the gaming swimming pool to something like Minecraft, but I'm just thinking in terms of, you know, those maps tend to be knowable quantities, you know? You can pare them down to manageable chunks.
Yeah, Overwatch against bots might work as well.
And so I think just those things where there's either a bit more something where there's leeway, whether that's just stealth or whether that's something that is actually just a peaceful game but is first person and you want to use those movements for other things, is good. But also at the other end, as long as it's a knowable quantity and you can get to grips with a particular bit of a map, then you can then relax in that aspect of it, and then maybe that would free you up a bit to concentrate on the more difficult bits. But I'd say that's the riskier end, you know, in that it might just be overwhelming and, you know, you end up not wanting to go back to those things. I've had that happen to me with some first person shooters, especially when I wasn't used to the control systems, just kind of going, you know what? I quite like sitting downstairs and going back on the Xbox, so bye.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. No, I think Minecraft's a cracking suggestion though, actually. I think that one kind of gets to it. Just simply because it has first-person combat elements, but they're not the main event. So it'll teach you that stuff, but on the way to teaching you loads of other things as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's potentially a bunch of other survival games that could work, but why when Minecraft is probably the one?
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
Left 4 Dead was
Yeah. It's got
not
potential too.
terrible as well, because, I mean, I wasn't great at it and I would panic, but at the same time you were sort of, you know, especially when there was a witch nearby, you'd sort of strafe and you'd be a bit more cautious and you could move a bit slower and have a look around things, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess in Left 4 Dead, the sense of sort of constant threat and the stakes of failure might be off-putting though. I think maybe
Yeah.
low stakes of failure is probably one of the key.
Yeah,
Key
I'm just
things.
riffing on like the things that I think that helped me.
Yeah, no,
But I
that's fair.
think I
Not
come from
discounting that.
a different starting point with it. So yeah, Minecraft and take it from there maybe.
Yeah. A good suggestion. Finally, Fizzy writes, I think I'm saying that right. Dear 7 Queen's Yard, London and 17 Manette Street, London. I guess that's Creighton Crowbar somehow, but I don't know how.
I don't know.
Probably a pun.
Maybe they are landmarks.
I guess, yeah. Perhaps. It says they're both excellent suggestions for the next PC Gamer Weekender if it's in London. Which it is. I think we announced that relatively recently. And if we
Wow.
didn't, oops. My question is, if you had incidental music from a single game accompanying you throughout your day-to-day life, which game's music would you choose? You can either choose one that would accompany your life like a fine wine accompanies cheese, or one that you think would improve your quote-unquote experience. I would personally choose the latter, and my game of choice would be the latest Doom, which can be calm atmospheric music and then suddenly a heavy metal synth infusion. BFG Division comes to mind. Keep on dissonancing your Ludo narrative. Fizzy.
That's nice.
It is nice. Music is nice.
No, that is, yeah.
I would choose the Katamari Damacy soundtrack. For my entire life.
Really?
Yes. Absolutely. Without a shadow of a doubt. You can't see that?
Well,
Honest to God, it would be helpful for a lot of different reasons. One, I would never be sad, because it's the happiest music on earth. Two, I would never take myself too seriously, because it's extremely silly.
yeah.
Three, I would never feel embarrassed or concerned, because I would know that ultimately I'm a tiny little man rolling a big ball of shit until it consumes the universe.
Okay,
And that's a positive.
well, that's quite self-aggrandizing, isn't it,
Well-
really? You're going to consume the universe.
Well, like a lot, not all of it. A lot of it. I
you
think it's
just
start-
said consume the universe.
Oh, that was hyperbole. But only a bit. Only a bit hyperbole.
See, I thought that you were going to go big with the spaceships and
Yeah, but you
things.
think I was going to say the Mass Effect soundtrack or something.
No, I don't think it
I think
was
I
that.
wouldn't be able to stop crying. That's the problem.
Oh, for goodness sake.
It's just so beautiful.
Ugh,
Those woofy synths.
I don't
Love
even
'em.
remember how it goes.
I can't do an impression of the majesty of the Mass Effect soundtrack.
Celine Dion, isn't it, right?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Trying to think of a Celine Dion Mass Effect pun then.
Well,
but-
actually, I'd cry if it was Celine Dion.
yeah. You'd care if it was Cher or something.
Oh,
soundtrack
I
you Mass
would.
Effect.
Definitely. She doesn't do enough gaming soundtracks.
No, she doesn't.
I'll tell you that for nothing.
Honest to God, I would genuinely play the Cher Doom soundtrack.
Oh my god, that would be amazing. Oh, I might write to her.
Yeah, you do that.
I will. Yeah.
No, definitely Katamari Damacy. I can't really think of anything else I would even consider for that particular role. Get it? Role?
Readers, or listeners, he just winked at me with that. That was the cluck of the tongue with the wink.
Oh dear. I'm sorry.
It's,
Pip, what music would you
well,
soundtrack your life with?
It will not surprise you to know that the Loco Roco song just
That's actually really good.
infuses my life. And so on and so forth.
That is constantly playing in your head, isn't it?
Yeah, just like the whole time.
All right, we need a Dishonored accidental kill montage to the Loco Roco soundtrack immediately, and that can replace anything you subsequently write about Dishonored. next iterate, next part of your ongoing account of your time in that game. Don't bother, just that.
I inappropriately get sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows stuck in my head when I'm playing murder games as well. So, make of that what you will. You'll probably walk in the living room and I'll just be like, sunshine, lollipops,
you're basically
and rainbows.
The pyro from TF2, aren't you?
I've never played TF2.
Well.
I know.
You don't even need to. You just watch the videos. They're the best thing about it.
Oh, I've watched some of them.
He said controversially.
Something about toast. Something about toast? Someone was running out of toast?
I think someone has a sandwich.
Maybe. I don't know. Something about toast. Bread?
Definitely bread, yeah.
Maybe.
No, don't say maybe, definitely.
A bread fell into a portal or out of a portal.
Oh, the bread, yeah, no, that does happen, but definitely bread.
But, toast is bread.
Not yet, it's not.
But, it's still bread.
Hang on, not now, it's not.
But it is.
It's toasted
They're
bread.
both bread.
But, if you say to the average human, how are we even on this? If you say to the average human being, do you want a piece of bread? And you give them a piece of toast, they'll be like, I thought you said I was going to get a piece of bread. And if you were then a pedant, you're like, well, yeah, but I toasted it. They'll be like, fuck you.
Yeah, but that's a very specific scenario.
They do not agree with the parameters of this role play.
Well, no, because toast and bread are very different things when you're offering people something. It would be like me saying, do you want, flour and butter, or do you want some biscuits? They're not one and the same. However, when you're talking purely on a semantic level, toast is bread.
I don't agree, and I think a court would find you incorrect.
But what do you think a toaster does?
It toasts bread.
Exactly.
But it transforms the bread into toast.
No, it makes it toasted. Toasted
what is
bread.
Understood by any decent person to be a semantically and semiotically different entity.
So, when you put a tea cake into a toaster...
You made a mess.
What does it become?
A melted tea cake?
No, it becomes toasted tea cake.
You're all right about that, yeah.
Right. So, clearly, the toaster doesn't perform any sort of, transmutative magic, does it? It's not like a sort of fucking, what's the word? Transubstantiation miracle, is it?
I actually maybe am now realizing that I believe that it is. And I somehow religiously object to your blasphemous notion that bread and toast are somehow merely different states of the same thing.
Well,
one of them dry and hot, the other one soft and cool, like me.
It's not a reversible transformation. It's not like when you've got frozen bread.
I totally, I get where you're coming from a scientific point of view, but I just think in our culture and civilization, we understand toast very differently to the way we understand bread.
So you would prefer to have a religious affiliation to the toaster than admit that I was right.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that's where we've gone.
Oh my God.
Even if you are right, which I believe you probably are. You're still being very difficult about the contents of that TF2 short, and I don't even know how we got onto this.
What happens in the TF2 short?
Someone teleports a lot of bread and it turns into a monster.
But why? What's the deal with bread?
It's part of the plot, isn't it? The unfolding drama, the mise en scène.
But is that part of the lore of TF2?
Yeah, and it is now, yeah.
But, was it before? Is this an in-joke that I just wasn't getting?
It's less an in-joke, just a joke, really.
But, it was funny. But, was it, tapping into some other, deeper meaning of bread in the universe?
No, but you're correct to identify it as bread, because I think if you'd said toast, me, would have been completely confused by what video you're referring to. Because it contained bread, not toast.
Well, it came out of something, so I thought it might be toast.
You can't just... Toast isn't what happens if you put bread through anything.
But, all I remembered was the bread slice coming out of something, and therefore, logically, might have been
Mostly
toast.
loaves in that video.
I don't remember that. I wasn't really paying much attention, as you will have guessed.
The question was about soundtracks.
But I answered this. This is hardly my fault. I was, being efficient. Moving on. What were you talking about? Why are we on TF2? Why were we on toast at all?
I don't know. I just don't know. I wish I had another question to pass over to, but...
Well, you can find one.
No, but... I can't just desperately find a question so that we don't end on what is toast.
What's your favourite name of a character in Dishonored 2?
I actually really like Kirin Jindosh. That's a good one.
I should have known you'd have an actual answer.
Of course I do. Of course I do.
But, what does he do?
I don't want to say it. Spoilers.
Oh.
Sort of. Not really.
Okay, fine. In the original Dishonored.
Quite like Farley Havelock. That's a good name. It's fun to say.
What does he do?
He's a leader of the conspiracy. Well, he's leader of the rebels that rescue you at the beginning of the game. And, his name is from an old poem called Havelock the Dane.
In the universe?
In the English literature, yeah, in Old English.
But, in the game universe?
No, in our universe.
Oh.
It's a Old English name. Which, tickles me. Literary pickle, so to speak. That's a cluster pickle.
Yeah. So he could have been called Farley Beowulf.
He could be, but that'd be a bit on the nose, wouldn't it?
But why was it on the nose in the first place?
Well, it's not on the nose now.
But why was it not on the nose?
Because it's a bit more of an obscure reference. People aren't going to immediately,
But
think
it's
of
just a
something else.
name.
But it would have distracting connotations otherwise.
But Havelock is the same name as the guy. That guy. The guy called Havelock from, those Discworld books.
I guess it is.
Veterinary.
Maybe that might be where it comes from.
Well, exactly. It might not be your old British
Well, I am going to say that
Norse
some
mythology
fucking Saxon
thing.
got there first.
With
Didn't
what?
he? With the name Havelock.
But it doesn't sound very Saxon.
It's Danish.
Well,
Famously, the poem's called Havelock the Dane. So in many ways, I don't really understand why I said Saxon.
for God's sake. They could have called it Sandy Toksvig if they wanted something Danish. Anyway.
Why are we still talking?
Well, you wanted a new question.
I did, yeah, but...
To recover from the other question.
Realise. What's your favourite name of a Dishonored person?
I don't have one.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't remember anyone's name in that game.
What's the main guy's name?
Corvo. Corvo Atano.
Yeah.
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 But this wasn't a literal thing. Just, you don't go around checking the names of everyone who dies. They're just, overseer, open brackets, dead, close brackets,
In many ways.
Or civilian, open brackets, unconscious, close brackets,
A lot of that. A lot of that going around.
It's not like they just sort of say Tim Biggins or whatever his name is,
Would you treat them better if it did?
If one of them was called Dr. Serena Campbell and I could get very excited about that, she's like my favourite character from Holby City.
Okay.
Then sure. Or Jack Naylor, who is also
your favourite character from Holby City.
Yeah. They're very different. One's very emotional and the other one is a cold-hearted megalomaniac. I like them both equally.
Excellent.
Serena likes Shiraz.
Oh, good.
What?
No, good. I'm pleased for your enthusiasm for Holby City, but I don't know how we got here from favourite game soundtrack. I really don't.
We could leave now.
Let's go.
Bye.
Well, we can't yet.
Oh.
We have to say the thing at the end.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
So that's all the questions we got. Well, that's all the questions we thought we had answers to. But it turns out...
Anyway. Hang on.
What's gone wrong there, Pip?
Well, I'm a bit... Oh, yeah.
Microphone problems. If you'd like to send us a question for a future episode, then you may do so by emailing us questions@crateandcrowbar.com. You can also leave a question...
Make it exciting.
Leave a question on Twitter, I guess. Don't leave it there, but, send it, whatever.
I was talking at you, not them.
Oh, sorry. Jesus, alright. Christ, I'm getting notes now. Okay. You can leave us a question on Twitter, why not? It's a Crate and Crowbar. This is my YouTuber voice, and I don't know.
Where are you from?
I don't know. Where are any of them from? You can tweet us as individuals. I'm at CATHURSTEN. Pip is
at Philippa War, which is at PHILIPPAWARR.
Wow. You can also discuss this episode in Discord. The link will be in the show notes and on the website, critcrowbar.com. And that was a clusterpickle.
Oh.
But thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. What?
I gave you a look that was like we're about to do that thing.